Howdy, everybody. This video will talk about your network of owner-operators. For my network of close owner-operator friends, um, not that many, but I would say they're either currently a millionaire or they're on the path of becoming a millionaire. So, like all my owner-operator friends that I'm close to are highly successful. They're elite. They are achieving millionaire status in their career. If they haven't already, they're on the path to becoming a millionaire. Um, I'm on the path, but it's going to take a little while, probably 10 years more driving before I get there. But some of these guys, they're doing quite well. And you know, what's nice about networking with these drivers is that they don't really need anything from me. It, they figured this game out a long time ago. And it's interesting because you may be a new owner operator, but if you can network with guys who've already been there, done that, that's going to benefit you. And my criteria for networking with other owner operators is very strict. I'm extremely choosy who I associate with, and I screen a lot of guys out. It's nothing personal, but I have a limited number of hours per day that I can spend on other drivers. And you know, I, you know, I have to pick and choose who I'm going to spend my time with. You know, you'll often see guys on Facebook, for example, if you look at their profile, they'll have several hundred contacts. It's way too many people. You're complicating your life. I don't know if you're in contact with several hundred people. I would find that too distracting to run a business and be in contact with all these people. I whittle that down. So I may have maybe 100 people on my Facebook page that I network with, but most of those are Navy buddies or family or friends, lifetime friends or something like that. A smaller group would be the owner operators that I network with, and there only may be a dozen or less that I'm in regular contact with. These guys are all successful. They're still teaching me a few tricks. They're just as good as an owner operator as I am, maybe even slightly better, and they have more money than I do. So it's great to be able to find guys like that and network with them. But in order to find them, you're going to have to weed through hundreds of drivers, and you just can't be friends with everybody. Now, most of my friends are more successful than I am. A few are up and coming. They may not be at the level that I'm currently at, but they're on their way. But I would say every single one of them in the course of their career are going to be either are currently millionaires or on the path to becoming millionaires. And it's great, because these guys are performing at a very high level, extremely high level. It's not that they're racking up, 130,000 miles per year. They're just operating their business very smartly. They're maintaining their equipment at a high level. They're watching their cash flow. They're watching their profit margins. They're investing their money. They're doing all the things right. Everything you could ask for in an owner operator. They're doing it on a daily basis. Every single day, they're performing at the very highest level, and that's what you want as an owner operator. You want to find guys like that, because there are plenty of losers out there, guys who aren't making it, and you'll be able to identify them very quickly because typically they're not happy. They're kind of miserable, and they'll be in a very skeptical, highly critical, just kind of stuck, in their career, and they're going nowhere. Their career is going absolutely nowhere. and they may even think about getting out of trucking because they may have such a negative attitude towards trucking. They're like, this isn't worth it. It's a waste of time. You can't make any money. You hear the laundry list of excuses why they're not successful. Conversely, you take a look at some high performing owner operators. These guys, they're masters of the game. You know, they have fought through their battles to get to where they're at, and now they're enjoying it every day. Every day they're just enjoying it as much as they possibly can. They enjoy driving, they enjoy hauling loads, they enjoy their equipment, and you rarely hear them complain. They may complain about something silly, but they're not overly serious about their complaint. I can always tell when somebody has money. If somebody has money, they're generally happy all the time. You're not gonna be able to affect them in a way that it's gonna make them have a bad day. It's like every day is a good day. Because they can manage their finances, they can handle any problem that comes up. They know the game through and through. They spent years developing their skill level. And when it comes to who they're going to be friends with, they're choosy as well. Because just like me, they don't need a lot of friends. They just a handful of good ones. That's all you need. You don't need 700 friends on Facebook. That does you no good as a small business owner. What you need is just a handful of highly successful people that you can interact with, you can learn from, and then that will wear off on you. But if you hang out with losers, it's going to have the opposite effect. They're going to pull you down. I've tried this over the course of my life to lift different people up, lift them up, lift their spirits, give them motivation, things like that. It never works. I got out of the business of trying to save people from their situation. They have to save themselves. I'm not going to save anybody. You got to put forth the effort to save yourself. If you're in a bad spot, I understand, because that happens to everybody. But in order to save yourself, you're going to put into work yourself. No one's going to put into work for you. I'm not gonna lift guys out of their situation. I'll point them in a direction, but I'm not gonna waste my time trying to save their business. If their business fails, it fails. Maybe they'll learn from it. But when you network with elite owner operators, it's a whole different story. They're playing the game at the very highest level. They're not doing small stuff. They're not complaining about small stuff. See, a lot of drivers, especially new owner operators, and I've been guilty of this myself when I first started, complained about the company, or they complained about their dispatcher, asset manager. Maybe they complained about the maintenance, the maintenance crew, not getting enough miles, so on and so on and so on. I mean, they're struggling. They're starting out and they're really, really struggling. These guys who've made it, they've been owner operator for 10 years or more. All the little things have all been ironed out. They fixed their credit, they got out of debt, they saved their money. They're on their third, fourth truck, maybe their fifth truck. Everything is smooth. Their business is running on autopilot, and they don't worry about anything. They got enough money. They don't lose sleep about anything. Nothing bothers these guys. Nothing. They're not going to have a bad day. Every day is a good day. So this is really what you should be striving for as a new owner operator. You want to get to this point in your career where you're among the elite. You've mastered the game. You've pulled yourself out of maybe a bad situation, and now you're on top of it. And once you're on top, it's great. Now you can observe other drivers, and you kind of know where they're at in their career, because you've already been through that and overcome them obstacles. Some guys get stuck. They get stuck in their development. They never get better. They reach a certain point, and that's all the further they go. They won't go any further. But for the elite among us who've been doing this for quite some time, they just get better and better and better. Every day is another day of continuous improvement. They may have money today, and tomorrow they'll have more money, and the day after that they'll have more money than the day before. It just gets better and better and better, and they become more and more elite. When you start talking about guys performing at a high level, they're probably between 10 and 20 years. After 20 years, they're in a position where they can retire if they wanted to. They may still be young, and they can retire. They may have achieved millionaire status before they reach full Social Security age. They may keep driving because they enjoy it. But they're not out there wasting their time making friends with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes along. If you want to be part of that circle, you're going to have to earn their respect. You're going to have to earn that network contact, their friendship. They don't need more friends. They don't need. You want to be friends with these guys? They don't need anything from you. Nothing. No, they don't need anything from me. And honestly, I don't need anything from them. But it's a different level when you reach this point in your career, and you got, like I say, maybe 10 or 12 friends that are other owner operators who are just as good as you are, and they fought their battles, just like you. They may be at the same career level as you. They may have the same much money as you. They may also be on the path to becoming a millionaire just like you. But I would say the guys that I'm closest to are either already millionaires or on the path to becoming millionaires. And they're all performing at extremely high level. And when I look at drivers that want to network with me, there may be 100 guys that want to network with me. I only may let 1 or 2 per year get anywhere near my business. That's it. I don't need more friends. I don't. So if you want to get in that circle, you better, you're going to have to bring something to the table. You got to have something to offer, because these guys don't need anything, nothing. So you want to be part of their circle, it's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough. But if you are part of their circle, you're going to benefit greatly, because they have all the experience in the world. They've been around. They know how to get things done, and they're highly successful, and they don't need anything from you, nothing. So if you get to be part of that circle, count your blessings, because they'll help you become a millionaire at some point during your career if you play your cards right. If you're stupid, they'll probably kick you out. They're not going to allow stupid people to hang around their business. So it's quite interesting. As your career develops, you get past 10-year point, and you're going on 20 years, you're at the very top of the game. You've mastered the game. Yeah, you'll network with other drivers. You'll be friends with other drivers, but only those drivers who meet your standards. You're not gonna have 500 contacts that you're networked with. Nobody has time for that. So you have to pick and choose who you're gonna network with, who you're gonna be friends with, and only spend that time with those guys who seem to be, the most deserving of your time and attention. Otherwise, it's a complete waste of time. And these guys don't play games. They're focused, they're driven, they're highly successful. They're not going to screw around with some new owner operator doesn't have their head on straight. They're just not going to waste your time. So keep that in mind. You're a new owner operator. if you ever have the opportunity to network with high-performing owner-operators, don't blow it. You know, these guys will help you out over the course of your career, but you know, you gotta show some respect to these senior owner-operators. You know, they're willing to help, but they're not going to put up with any BS either. You know, so they don't need more friends. They really don't. They don't need anything from you. They have no need for you whatsoever. They have all the money they need. They have all the experience they need. They don't need nothing. You know, so if you are part of their group, count your blessings. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. For watching. We'll see you on the internet.